Okay, guys, it's time to dig in the lunchbox and choose something from this episode of episode 13. By the way, 13 on 13.
Ooh.
It's October 13th.
Ooh.
And this is our 13th episode.
Ooh.
Oh my God.
Of American Lunchbox Podcast. What's going on, guys?
Not too bad. Is it a pseudo Halloween episode? Is that what we're kind of doing?
It's a pseudo Halloween. It's a pseudo. We in the creep zone.
Huh?
Get it going. We're getting ready for the fall season, the Halloween season, and we're right on it, guys. We're starting it off 13 on 13. So, guys, what's going on with you guys? It's been a week. Haven't seen you guys. What's been going on, Chris? What's going on with you, brother? How was your week this week?
Well, as the stock on white people continues to fall, I've decided to double down, put all my chips in, and I've been working on my golf game. I've been going to the driving range at least twice a week, and I'm getting pretty good.
I understand. The real estate, the white real estate is definitely plunging.
You got to invest when things are low, because once it turns around, I'm gonna be at par. Let's put it that way.
Wow.
I might be under par by that time.
Good for you, man. Good for you. What's going on with you, Tim? How was your week this week, brother?
Mixed bag. Some good, some bad. I don't know how much I want to talk about on camera, but apparently I was an asshole this week.
Well, that's not unusual.
That's not
you're
unusual.
the Iceman from last week that said, fuck Trump, you could die.
That's true.
You also said fuck Kobe as a memorial.
There you go.
That is
the
very
Iceman.
true. So yeah, apparently, having the same attitude on the podcast and in translating that does not translate well into real life. So
you don't want to talk about it? You just teased us with what happened?
I guess I have to give an apology to my sister-in-law. I was trying to make a bad joke this week, and it came out really, really bad, and I accidentally insulted her, and I apologize to her personally, and I want to. That's my shout out for the week. Is I'd like to give a public apology for.
Don't use our platform for your bullshit because you fucked up this week. Don't use our platform for that. No. You go to her. Okay, all right, fine. We'll accept your apology. She should too, because Tim, you can't even judge sometimes when you're saying what you're saying.
Exactly.
It's like, how people always say, I can't, when they always say shit like, I don't know my own strength.
Yeah.
You don't know your own words.
Yeah. Words hurt. Words can hurt. We don't intend them to do, but they can do damage.
Oh man, I would love to hear it. I would love to hear what the hell you said, but it's okay. All
right.
We'll keep it moving. Hey, well, listen, my week was very interesting this week. Needless to say, I have been extremely busy with work and family and stuff like that. But I don't know if you know, but the Lakers won the championship. I don't know who's actually watching this.
I don't think anyone knows.
Yeah, but
except some people on Instagram viewing their Instagram after party.
Well, I live near LAX, so I heard the helicopters flying by when the Lakers landed at LAX. So I got to hear that.
Oh, okay. Well, listen, I got to hear the helicopters of the riots downtown when the Lakers won because I'm downtown. My office is downtown here, so I got to hear it all night. But they did win. Happy Lakers. Go Lakers. 17 championships now tied with the Boston Celtics. So big ups to the Lakers. Shout out to the Lakers for bringing one home. Also, obviously, not for you, Chris, but not for you, Tim. Excuse me, but for Chris and I. One for Kobe. We'll take that for number 24 and number 3 on the books. Tim, don't say a fucking word, Tim.
Not saying anything.
All right. So, yeah, one for Kobe. We'll take that for Kobe. So the Lakers won.
And shout out to the guy dressed as Mario riding a go-kart with the Lakers flag in downtown LA the other night.
Yes, I didn't see that, but I probably heard it from the helicopters.
If everybody was the same, life would be really boring. So we need freaks and geeks out there like that. So it makes life interesting.
True that. Give us something to report on as well. Well, guys, okay, so this week, as we dip into the lunchbox, and pull out a snack for what we're going to be talking about today, over the week, well, let's just see. We've had this conversation several times, but not publicly. But I think it's time for us to really sit down and talk about this. I'm going to set the tone very quickly for those of you all who are in podcast land and those of you all who are watching over on YouTube. By the way, go ahead and hit subscribe and download for those of you all who are watching. If you're over in podcast land, jump over to our YouTube station and subscribe there as well. Get some visuals on these guys as we talk about this. But I'm going to set up what we're about to talk about here. Now, when you step off the plane in Los Angeles, for those of you all who are visiting here for the first time, or those of you all who haven't been here in a while, the landscape of Los Angeles have changed dramatically. And I'm not talking about the new buildings going up downtown. I'm not speaking of that at all. What I am talking about are the streets themselves. You know, over the last 5 years, the homeless community, and notice what I said, the homeless community, and we'll talk about that in terminology as the show goes on, but the homeless community has grown astronomically to the point where it now takes up real estate, which is public real estate, in every aspect of the city of Los Angeles. Every city park, every city facility, every city street, every city road. And it has gotten to the point now where we are stepping on their shoes as the public, as it seems. It seems like we are invading their privacy to the homeless. Now, Chris lives in Venice. And Chris, I know you have stories about this. As a matter of fact, we ended the last episode, episode 12. Guys, go back and listen to that. Episode 12, we ended the last episode with Chris telling us a story about his Venice experience of the homeless and how he was impacted in just one experience. But Chris, I want you to go ahead and dive into this and tell us some of the things that are really going on right outside your doorstep, literally outside your doorstep, and mine too, down here in downtown LA. But tell me what your experiences are.
I'm going to do you one better, George. The list of stuff is so long. Why don't you tell me what type of a story you'd like me to tell?
Tim, I'm gonna ask Tim because Tim, what is your experience with the homeless? First of all,
It depends. I think it depends what city you live in. Venice is definitely its own little pocket of the universe here in LA with the homeless. But I mean, I used to live in Santa Monica, and yeah, it was a high tourist area, and you had a lot of homeless people there. But you know, they didn't bug me. They didn't really do anything. I mean, they'd ask for change and they'd ask for food, but they never, I never felt like, threatened by them or anything like that. I've lived in a few other cities where it was just, maybe one or two, just depending on where you're at, but it wasn't anything, wasn't like a camp out or an embankment. But I know if you go like towards downtown LA, especially like at night, you'll see a ton of homeless people, and it's actually really kind of, it's a different vibe, I think, from Venice. Venice, it's like I said, it's a tourist thing. It's like, okay, that's part of the culture. But like if you were to go to downtown LA and see the homeless, it's depressing. I mean, it's absolutely depressing where you're going down there and you're just kind of wondering. I mean, I've never been in that situation. I think George may have a little bit more insight into it, but it just, and I'm not saying that because George is black. I'm not saying, oh, George, you know what it's like to be homeless.
Oh, what are you trying to say? Because I'm a brother, I know about homeless people?
I'm not saying that. No, just based on your past conversations we've had on this channel, it sounds like you have a little bit more experience with that. But I mean, just from me as a middle class white guy, just going down there, it's just like it is really depressing, and you sit there and you kind of wonder. I understand how people can become homeless. I understand that there's a lot of factors that come into there. But I think when you see the downtown LA homeless population, it's not just, okay, I've lost my job or I've run into some hard times. It's almost institutional. It is generational homelessness that you see down there, where it's like you can tell that it is a never-ending cycle of people. That's a lifestyle that I couldn't even begin to imagine how you get into that situation.
That's what Tim just mentioned is... What's getting really scary is that where it used to be just random homelessness and a lot of it, and there was reasons for that, we're now moving into an area where homelessness is a culture and a big one, whereas before it was just like random because of the fact that now these encampments are growing and not being broken up. You now have what are essentially are villages. So we're creating essentially check this out. Do you think we're creating like an American gypsy class almost? For lack of a better word?
You called it an encampment, okay, which implies some kind of refugee imaging in my head. But realistically, I think you then called it, basically what I called it in the beginning. It's a community. It's a community that has a zip code. It's a community that has an address. They have doors. They have windows. They have a language. They have rules and regulations. They have an eviction way. They kick each other out. They understand how the things work within their small communities, how they build them. But go ahead, Chris.
No, it's my concern is that over the last year or two, that it seems to be just creating a separate class of people, in the way that, say, Irish travelers, for lack of a better word, gypsies, under DNA testing are ethnically Irish. They are not Romi, they're not Romani people. They didn't travel there. They're just certain people who lived in a caravan lifestyle for long enough that they're now considered a different ethnicity. It's not true. So you essentially have Americans living like this without any breaking it up, one, or two, helping it. So there's failures on both sides. There's under-policing on one side and there's underfunding on the other side, and the end result is bad.
Well, let's get to those stories. I want to hear a story Now, mind you, those of you all out in podcast land and those of you all who are looking, I don't have any idea what's on that list. We have not gone over the list. I'm just going to throw something out here randomly for Chris to be able to look at his list and basically give us an idea or a story about what I'm going to mention right now. But I guess one of the things that really invokes the most visualization are families. So I want to hear about a story that you've seen where there has been a family involved, whether it be a mother and a child, or maybe even a husband, wife, and a child.
Yeah, I saw a mom and her kid at the local park here, which is on the beach, and it is right next to an encampment. And I saw one of the homeless people like playing with the kid. And this was, I believe, during COVID. Everyone had no shoes on. The mom, the kid, and the guy. Now, either the mom was really hippy-dippy, or that was the father, and they were going to visit the father. And they were playing with this guy a little too close to be a random stranger who started playing with a kid. So, just like there are certain homeless people that you might know that didn't used to be homeless or had a mental breakdown and now they wander your neighborhood, there are people that go to visit these people. And that's, I wouldn't want it the other way, but that does mean to say that there's that this is in some way just acceptable, that this is the way that these people are living. In terms of my family, I had some neighbors. I had my uncle and his kids come out here, and the kids were the boys are teenagers. They're like 15, and we were walking on the boardwalk, which is sketchy in general, but now getting sketchier as there's less tourists and more, all the other elements. And this guy comes up to us dressed in full army camo. What's up? What's up? What's up? And we're being cautious. We're like, hello. And then he how a drug dealer will kind of slide in and pretend he's hanging out with you and then asks you to sell drugs or buy drugs. Sure. This guy did that and then goes, you guys need anyone murdered? Now, wow. Keep in mind, these kids are 15. My uncle's an ex-cop. He goes, we're more in a family photo type of mood at the moment. But we'll get back to you. He goes, all right, just let me know. And then he went up to the next person on the boardwalk and pitched the same exact thing. We were kind of wondering how much he would charge or what we could negotiate him down to, but we thought of that afterward.
Okay, now,
on the next episode of American Lunchbox Podcast, we'll negotiate it, man.
Right, Chris and family murder. Okay, but okay, so with that being said, and thank you for that story, because let's talk about, first of all, your family's from New York, from Queens, and they too have their own issues with the homeless. I know, okay, but let's put it in perspective. When people think about Venice, I'm talking about that picture that Three's Company, gonna lock my door.
Come on, knock
I'm
on our
waiting
door.
for you. Right? You remember that show was supposedly filmed at Venice Beach. It was that kind of show where people would come to Los Angeles and this was their experience, and they were roommates and they did all of these great things and they had all of these great experiences. So that is the perception that most people, as they're coming to Los Angeles, have of Venice.
That also exists. The two things exist on top of each other.
They do exist, but they coexist. They coexist. And for a person like myself, who has lived through all of this, I'm feeling a little appalled. I'm feeling a little insensitive, because I understand that. First of all, let me be clear. I got to be clear about this, because I know I'm going to get some pushback in this conversation. I know I'm going to get some pushback, not necessarily from you all, but whoever may be listening. Let me tell you first what I'm going to say. When I'm talking about what I'm about to say right now, right? I'm going to say it, but I'm not talking about the homeless person who is down on their luck,
right?
Who is unfortunately out of work, who lost their homes and is now working toward getting themselves back on their feet. A family that maybe have lost a loved one, a certain income, and children, because children are the highest population of the homeless that is rising right now in downtown LA. There are kids that are leaving tents and going into class. That was before the COVID. So I can only imagine now what the attendance like, as homeless children have no computers, that's another whole story. How are they going to school?
We're not talking about the people who are down on your luck, because those people have the instinct to get back on your feet. These people who are on drugs and who are mentally ill do not have the instinct to rebound, and that is a big problem.
They don't know any other life. This is what they've known,
or don't want any other life.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about them, ladies and gentlemen, in podcast land and on YouTube. We're not talking about those people. Okay, so I'm going to be extremely harsh in these words, but I'm not talking about those people. If that's you and you're listening to this, this is not for you.
No one is.
We're not talking about you. Okay, so now that's my disclaimer. Now, what pisses me off, what makes me angry, much like what Tim was saying, how when you go downtown and we talk about a community that has decided that they were going to not do any better than what they are. They have decided that they're going to continue to not get the help that they need. They're not going to get off of drugs. They're not going to stop selling drugs. They're not going to stop prostituting. They're not going to stop being a part of the community, whether it be buying and selling of goods. Instead, they're going to live there and settle for that life. Those are the ones that I'm talking about that makes me angry. And those are the ones who are taking opportunity. This is an opportunity now. So people now have coming to Los Angeles now to be a part of this community. There are homeless people traveling here.
Wouldn't you?
Why not?
There was a few times where I was down on my luck where I was like, I'm too proud to go home. I'll be homeless here. It's fine. I'm not going to do heroin here, but yeah, I'll go live on the beach. No one's going to bother me about it, and it's free.
People from up north, San Francisco, traveling down here on the train to get to be homeless here in this community. Yeah. Now, does that? I can't. But what they're doing is they're impeding upon my freedoms.
Right, that's a good libertarian argument. Is that you're?
That ain't libertarian. That's human.
Well, it's just that it's just that there's some crimes that are victimless, and there's some things that are on the books. And like I see signs over here that say van life is not a crime, meaning people want to live in vans. Well, no, they're right. It shouldn't be a crime if you want to live in a van. But all the other crimes.
If you're pissing on the ground and throwing your shit out of your van on the street, that's a problem.
Well, yeah, if the little kid wants to go to the library but they can't because the police have been told unless this guy is physically outside the library, is physically assaulting anyone, don't do anything. But if his pants are down, that's quite intimidating. The bus between me and you, George, is unusable, especially now during COVID. But that's the bus that the homeless go back and forth from Venice to downtown with to pick up the checks and come back here. If you want to even talk about how it's touched this show, if anyone saw the episode, I believe 9 it was, picture of the football that was deflated, I took that photo on the beach, and the whole time I was taking the photo, I had a guy laying in the sand looking at me and masturbating the whole time. When I said,
that's not going to make the that's not going to make a thumbnail for that.
Well, it's nothing we could upload. I turned the camera on him. I was like, keep going, and I figured, all right, he's going to bum rush me at this point. But
right.
he just kept laying in the sand jerking off, and I figured, all right, well, he's going to be gone by tomorrow. And nope, he was there the next morning jerking off still. So we have problems now that are just not being again, on one side it's a policing issue in that they are too PC to police it, but on the other side it's a funding issue too. So it's everyone. It's not a left right thing. There's a lot of local politics reasons it's happening, but it's a human issue. It's a humanitarian crisis, and it's in the middle of one of the richest places on earth. The building that went up behind my house is about $5 million building that went up. That same homeless guy shitting in my backyard is right there shitting in their backyard because the backyards are right next to each other. So it's crazy.
And like you said, if you're a homeless person, let's say you're living up north where the weather is really cold and it's crappy, and you hear about how great it is down in SoCal where it's pretty liberal laws, it's warm weather. I mean, yeah, I'd sit there and go you basically have a nice beach house now, where you can sit there and live in paradise and no one's going to bug you, and you can go panhandle out in the tourist areas and make it actually pretty good income.
Well, it's not exactly I don't even know if it's a liberal issue. Like in New York, they have just as many homeless as here, but they have enough shelters, and the federal court, not the Supreme Court, they denied, they didn't want to hear the case, but the I think it was the district or the appellate court, the circuit court.
Circuit court I think it's number 9.
Number 9. Okay, yeah, they basically said if you don't have a place to move someone, you can't move them and their stuff. But their stuff is just it's that stuff was looted from random garbage cans,
right,
in a lot of cases. So now you're saying you can't move this person's stuff that they moved out of the garbage can to put in the middle of a public park. So it does come into conflict with the public because you pay for a public park, because you pay your taxes. And these guys don't, and they live there. Now, I get that there's no other place to live. I get all the issues. I'm friendly with a lot of them. One guy, okay, I'll give you a quick story. This one guy was getting harassed by a bunch of teenagers. He was schizo. I told the teenagers to back off. The guy was so grateful to me, that he came up to me and gave me an orange marker. And he's like, here, this is for you.
Wow.
I said this. I said,
wow.
No, thank you. He said, what? He looked at it like it was a prize that I was hurting his feelings. He goes, you don't want this? I said, you know what? I have one already. He goes, okay, I got you.
Wow.
So the people, I'm not saying that people are bad, but the situation is really bad, and the situation's getting worse.
Do you think it's a mental health? Do you think it's a mental health issue as well? Lack of funding. And,
yeah. Oh yeah. It's mental health and drugs. The drug issue is the guy in the backyard here that used to live back there. Now he stays a couple blocks down. My neighbor said, "Hey, why don't you go to the shelter? There's a shelter that he knew about." He goes, "No, you don't understand. They don't let me do drugs or alcohol at the shelter." These guys know what's going on. You got to be in the shelter at a certain time. There's a curfew. Some of them aren't nice, and you can't be boozed up or high at the shelter. And a lot of these people are on the street because they're high. This guy in the backyard here, he wrote, I think it was this guy. They wrote on our wall with marker a union logo, as if there's a union, and it said Local Crack Smokers Union.
Wow.
You can't make this shit up. My back of my house is a meeting ground for the local Crack Smokers Union.
Wow.
I don't know if that was I don't know if they're related to IATSE or any of the other local unions.
You got the Teamsters out there, man.
They have high union. They have high union dues, though, man.
They're actually less lazy than Teamsters in some cases.
Probably. Probably, because they got to stay on the move. The Teamsters, they just sit. Okay, we're not gonna make this about the Teamsters.
Chris, I saw something the other day about talking about that exact issue with homeless shelters. Relaxing some of their policies about you can't be on drugs, you can't be high, you can't be tested positive or whatever. But it's like at the same time, it's really hard if you do have a drug problem to just sit there like that and say, okay, I have no drugs or whatever. It's like you still need a place to live, you need a place to shower, you need a place to get your mail so that you can, assumably get a job and get off the street. And it's, by saying, you have to be drug free. It's like, well, now you're creating this a standard that's really hard for a lot of people instead of giving them the help that they need. But it's, I know. I guess you also have to kind of want to not be on the streets either. So,
that's a big part of it. But then you hear about these people who clean up and years later they say, I can't believe so many thousands of people passed me and didn't help me. So are you being nice to them by catering, or are you being nice to them by saying, get the fuck out of here?
Right.
Or like I think in Rhode Island, they have a thing that it's mandatory. So this is a rights issue, I suppose, but it's kind of like a mandatory rehab place. It's kind of like a rehab jail. And there's actually pretty good success stories that have come out of it so far. Now, you would have to get the public to be willing to do that here.
Yeah, you got 2 million homeless people here. They are a part of the population.
Well, I know there's at least 60,000 in LA.
At least, but in the state of California,
2 million.
In the state of California, if you go like up north, if you add all of the homeless,
I don't know. That's a lot.
That's a lot of. But it's a lot of people. It's a lot of people, man. And you figure
it's the whole West Coast that's like this.
My point is that Rhode Island, it's about 3 people in Rhode Island, including the mayor.
Yeah.
Of course they can do it. As a matter of fact, they probably know the people in their community. Oh, Johnny, who came back from Iraq, unfortunately got on drugs, and we're gonna, whatever. They probably even know. The communities are so close knit. But when you come here to Los Angeles, and you figure, hey, what's the real solution for dealing with the homeless here in Los Angeles? And the first thing, obviously, most people want to do is throw a bunch of money at it.
Right.
That's the Democratic way of looking at problems in the United States, is that we just throw a bunch of money at it. And hopefully if we throw a bunch of money at it, it'll work. But I'm the firm believer, and I said this a million times on the show, even about the black community. I don't believe that putting a whole bunch of money in the community is going to save it.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay, but I don't think that that's going to help it. I think some of it, much like what Tim said, much like what you've said, I'll go ahead and agree with this as well. Some of it has to deal with the mentality of the people. And if you can't change the mentality, then what happens is they pass the mentality on. That's why when you go back to your old neighborhoods, you'll find a guy that used to live, your old friend, who still lives in that neighborhood and says, hey, man, good to see you. Oh, my God, you live in L.A.? And it's the same thing. People, same way. When you get out of these homeless shelters, when you get out of this homeless community, they go back and they see the same people because it becomes a generational thing. It becomes a community thing. You say, oh, man, you look good, man. Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the money issue, Santa Monica spent tens of millions of dollars to hire homelessness experts, and one of which was being paid about $11,000 a month, was it?
Jesus.
And after this program of $60 or so million, they housed about under 200 people.
And Santa Monica, and they're aggressive. They're aggressive against the homeless. They don't play that shit. They're extremely aggressive. They make sure that they keep moving. Even if they understand what the laws are. Their plan is to keep their cities clean of homeless people.
Well, that law has that law or that whatever mandate from the judges has actually put some cities into conflict with each other. Whereas, for instance, on one side of the Venice underpass of the 405, Mar Vista or L.A. essentially had the homeless people, and Culver City didn't. L.A. sued Culver City, take some too, meaning instead of us cleaning up our mess and using you as an example, you have to share the burden. And you have to, and now there's both sides. So now both sides of the highway have it. And not only that, in the middle of that highway underpass, where there's giant poles holding up the highway, there's a hammock in between. The medium, where cars are zipping past you with car fumes on both sides. In that same homeless underground thing, there is a door built into a tent. A plywood and a door inside the plywood. There is a front door. The tent is so fucking large.
Wow.
There was a gang fight there. Where I think the gangs might have been claiming territory or charging tariffs, rent, essentially. And a car drove up, shooting a gun into the tents, and the fucking guy ran out of the tent and started shooting back. In downtown, when they go to sweep out the tents, they find guns, they find swords. I'm not blaming them. If I lived like that, I'd want some shit on me too. But the shit is getting really dangerous, and to keep throwing money at it that disappears into a hole doesn't do anything. Another thing, real quick. Sorry to talk so much, George.
No.
You're the expert, man.
Please.
We have a big homeless thing now that shelters about 150 people here, and it's not always completely full, but they fill it up about 75% a night. But some of the regulations in LA, when they started trying to do this, is they knew that, for instance, after World War II, they understood how the Army Corps of Engineers understood how to make these giant wigwams, essentially, that house tons of people on the cheap. We could still do that. It's still the cheapest way to do that. But some of that stuff doesn't fit code of regulations, of buildings, of green regulations where, hey, you can't make a new structure if it doesn't have a garden attached. So now you see converted handicapped porta potties into a homeless thing with a fucking garden on top. This whole thing costs way more than is possible to house everyone.
Yeah, then some artist...
Now you've made a very fancy, artistic-looking porta potty that doesn't put a dent in the homeless situation.
Yeah, somebody donated, I think, a bunch of little tiny houses and came out to the homeless, and then the cops or the city came down and said, nope, can't have that shit. Turn them all down.
It actually gave them a physical address and everything, and they were on the freeway. I remember seeing them off of the 110 freeway, and they were little little homes built in. They would bring them in, and they would sit them down, and the people were able to actually physically live in there. And then something happened where, because it didn't follow a certain code, I don't know what code it was, they start yanking them out, which could have been anything at this point, because either side can find some way to sabotage the efforts of the other. It's like, okay, someone could say, well, these homes are not transitional. In other words, what we're doing is providing them homes, and they're never going to move out. That could definitely be one side or one argument. The other side could say, well, these homes are safe. They keep people in a place where they can be sheltered, and we need to do something to help these people stay safe.
Well, you know what, George?
Same argument for the same home.
You know what, George? I have my official state ballot that I just filled out today.
Guy.
And there isn't one proposition. There isn't one thing on here about homeless. There's some regulations about trying to help out, drug people and rehabilitation as far as prison sentences go. But there isn't anything about homeless, helping out the homeless. And maybe, this is the nice thing about California. If you get X number of signatures, anybody can put a proposition on the ballot. So maybe the next election, maybe you, Chris, we could go canvass. We could go collect signatures. I don't know. Get something out there that says, hey, it may not be a total solution, but it's something.
It's part of what you just said. I think it's a good idea, but I think part of the problem is also a flaw of people being optimistic. No one wants to doom someone to something they think is a worse life. So no one wants to say, "Hey, we got a proposition. It's called Proposition. Get the fuck out of our street."
Right.
So people are gonna. So what the things that do pass is like, well, we got to help the homeless. But what that looks like in practice is what they have on Venice Boulevard, which is a group of city workers comes with a mobile shower, and they sit there outside all day monitoring the mobile shower to check people in and out, and no one uses the mobile shower. I've never seen a line in front of it. I've never seen anything like that. I could be wrong. Maybe I don't hang out there enough. Would you?
I know it's helped some people. But, I know they've done it in some cities, and it's helped out some people. But it's if it's only a once a month thing or once a year thing, what's it really going to do?
And we've seen these kind of politics before. We've seen this. We see it all the time. We see it. We see it in our workplaces. We see it everywhere. We see rules and regulations being created by not first actually talking to the individuals who are experiencing the travesty or experiencing the downfall. So that's
a good word.
Yeah. So basically, what happens is that they create these laws, they create these regulations, they come up with these programs that they have not thought through enough to even ask the person that they're supposed to be helping.
Good point.
Will this help? So when you go to a homeless person, would this help to have a porta potty here? Would this help you to be able to take a shower? How often would you take a shower? I would venture to say that there's more polling and there's more groups. And look, when you're looking at a feature film, than it does when it comes to actually putting the money into a commercial, into actually helping the community. I mean, we do so much to find out what shows are better, or what can we change? Is the ending good? Or I mean, we go through all of this stuff, but when it comes to actually helping the community and helping people, we just throw shit out there. Like I said, we just throw money out there, throw it out there, and it doesn't do anything. It becomes a waste of time.
Yeah, there's tons of ways in which it's a waste of time, and here's another big problem with the politics and with the money and with local stuff. So back where I'm from in Queens, they were trying to convert a hotel, the hotel into homeless spaces, and the people who were protesting it were in the neighborhood.
I remember this.
So what happened was, the people on behalf of de Blasio came in and called everybody who disagreed with it racist, because the homeless people would be multicultural. And therefore, if you don't want these guys walking around the street all day, you must be racist. But here's what they weren't saying, is that sometimes it's the mayor or whoever local policymaker's buddy that owns the hotel. There's a transfer of money from the city to the hotel. They're charging a pretty big rate. That would be much more than building a little tent as a temporary shelter. So there's a whole infrastructure that benefits certain people for this situation to be existing. And sometimes the people who own the finances of this are not in the city. They're not living in the area where the homelessness happens, where the shelter even is, the place that they own. This person had a failing hotel. Now they don't. There's a lot of lobbying power for someone that has the money, that's making money off homelessness without fixing the problems.
That's right. And that's when we talk about throwing a whole bunch of money and letting the bureaucrats and letting private sector come in, and instead of allowing those people who are feet on the ground in the trenches actually use the money and probably appropriate the money in a better way. But again, it's politics. It's how politics creates these problems, because problems creates money, and money creates people, human people, to be able to make decisions for other people who have nothing to do or say about their own future or what will happen to them. And but by the way, I'm going to say this. As a person who has experienced homelessness, both personally and within my family, which we'll talk about later, I understand the mentality. I understand the feeling and the conviction. I understand wanting and praying for better. I get it. I understand all of that, and I understand also looking for an answer. What resources are out there, and how do I get these resources? I understand all of that. But the bottom line comes from the choices that I make every day. Every choice that I've made in my life have gotten me to this podcast minute right here. And I have to be responsible for it. The minute I recognize that is the minute I say, go back to the old school, lift myself up with my own bootstraps bullshit, and I do better. And I'm telling you, a lot of it has to do with the mind and how people, these homeless people, and I say these homeless people, you know who I'm talking about, need to get their minds right. And that's why I say money is not going to be the answer for this problem.
And I think, George, that's the big problem too, is that why there's such a lack of public enthusiasm to give money to the homeless, because especially when they say, oh, you're going to get a free house. What the hell? I've got to work for it. I've got to work 40 hours a week. I've got to bust my ass. Why the hell should we give these guys why should they have a nicer lifestyle than me? But, you know, it's in the law, and it's in the aggregate or in the long term, you have to look at it from a society standpoint. It's better to have these people off the street. It's better to have them, you know, in an actual home with an actual address than even though it sucks to have to give them money for, you know, to get a free house. I mean, it's like kind of like the Habitat for Humanity kind of thing, but it works in the long term. Now, I like the idea of, okay, you give them the basics. Here's a tiny house. Here's just enough so that you're off the street. You're not causing problems. You have a physical address. You have something, you know, so that you're at least got a little better than what you are. But, you know, I don't know. I don't know what the solution is.
Maybe a solution that slightly differs than with both of you is to spend the money, but spend it on mental institutions and spend it on drug rehabs that are mandatory.
I'm sure with so many people degreed in social service, including myself, so many people degreed who are not working in their degree. Where are these people who deal with social services every day? Where are the tons of degrees that we issue out to colleges every year? Where do they work? And how come there's not a facility that is geared for them to go and do all of what they need to do in order to help the community? Remember, we have social degrees.
Yeah, they got out of college.
Where are these people?
They got out of college. They looked at the job market and said, well, "Fuck this! I'm gonna go work for TV. Fuck, pays better."
Or the centers where they would work have been shut down.
Yeah.
Shut down, closed, because again, politics.
George, can I go on a little rant here? It'll be quick,
By all
but
means,
I won't have to look at
brother.
a list for this one.
You guys,
Okay.
get ready for the American Lunchbox podcast rant. Chris.
I was down at the handball courts a couple months ago, throwing the ball against the wall when I heard a helicopter whirring over me. At the same time, keep in mind the handball courts are right next to the giant homelessness encampment, where there is multiple handball courts taken up residentially, one by a living room space and one by what seems to be a private gym for homeless only, surrounded by caution tape. Besides that, the helicopters were whirring overhead. They were the newscopters, and what they were there for was not to take pictures of the horrific scene in which the people were living, but they were actually there for the BLM protest, which was on the street. I saw waves and waves of middle-class Whole Foods shoppers, diverse array of Whole Foods shoppers with signs about Black Lives Matter, about Breonna Taylor, and about George Floyd. And the one thing they all had in common was that they were walking right past the homeless situation. I'm not saying that Breonna Taylor or George Floyd situations were right, but they were not in California. And I would imagine that of all the BLM protesters in all the states and all the cities and all the different countries that had protests about that, walked right by the gaping wounds in their own city to which they could have been helping in order to march and chant on the beach, because that was the hashtag of the week, and that's where the cameras were shooting.
Excellent rant. Touche, my friend. Touche. I hear exactly where you're going with that. And as a member of that community, I can see where that rant originates. I feel your pain, brother. And we unfortunately we can't solve all the problems, but you know, when you have those gaping holes of people not looking at something that is so obvious, you know, it is. I can definitely see where you're coming from, brother. And I touche. I hear you. One final story, and then we'll do our shout outs. You know, my office down here is in downtown Los Angeles, and sometimes I'm fortunate enough at this point in my life to spend time with my daughter, Layla. Shout out to Layla. She's 13 years old, and you know, she was here one time, and unfortunately, the parking here in Los Angeles is so horrible downtown. So I had to go move my car in order for it to not have gotten a ticket for the day. So she's sitting up here, and I've run downstairs to go get my to go get the car. The car is about 4 city blocks away, and to move it. And you can kind of see that visual. And as I was walking across what would be my main street, which is 6th Street, we passed by what would be a Goodwill store, and we passed by what would be an antique shop. And right between the antique shop and the Goodwill store was a young lady. Now, this young lady was a white girl. You could tell she was artistic, very artistic. And she was lying against the wall. And as she was lying against the wall, she had her head slumped down. She had one pen on the scratch pad that she had been drawing this beautiful picture, and it had stopped in one place. She had one pen one hand on a pen, and then she had a needle in the other hand, in the other arm, and she was passed out. And I wanted to take a picture of it, but I just didn't want that into my reality. I didn't want this scene in my head, but I wanted to take a picture of it and show my daughter, but I didn't do it. I said, you know what? I can't. I don't want to ever see this again. What I'm looking at, beautiful, beautiful young girl, maybe between the age of, 18 and 23. The artwork on her pad was so intricate, and it was a horrible vision. And she was just passed out, slumped down, her head slumped down, where her pen had stopped right at that point where she was beginning to finish up the artwork. I walked on, I moved my car, and I didn't, because of the parking, I didn't walk back the same way. But when I got back, I talked to Layla, and I explained to her what I had seen in a way that was not in a way that belittled the young lady, but yet showed her how her creativity was what needs to be important about what I'm saying. The drug problem, we can get over, we can figure out an answer, but she needs to continue on with that. You got to push forward. So I used that as an example and twisted it, but it was heartbreaking to see that.
Yeah. It's a great visual, and it's also, you're right, it is the most heartbreaking because just because there's so much homeless here. I've seen a number of people now where I could tell they're halfway there, meaning the skin's not fully wrinkled yet, the boobs aren't sagging yet, the hips haven't shrunken yet, the butt isn't gone yet, the eyes aren't fully dead yet, but I'm seeing both someone who's a chronic drug user, and I'm seeing both a person that could go on to live a full life. But in
one person, right? You're talking about one individual, aren't you? You could see that in one individual, right?
George?
Yes. You could see that in one individual, right?
Oh, no.
I still see George. He's still there. I see Chris.
I see Chris as well. He doesn't see us.
This is the fun with doing Skype.
George?
Yeah.
For those of you that are in podcast land, sounds like we're having some connection issues. Chris is touching himself. We've lost Chris.
We've lost Chris.
It happens.
But listen,
we're about ready to wrap it up anyway. So
yes. So you guys, we've lost Chris on it, but what I want you to do is Tim, do you have any shout outs, by the way?
Not at this time. I gave him at the beginning to my sister-in-law. I won't call her out by name. I don't want to embarrass her.
No,
I don't want her pissed. I don't want her any more pissed off at me than she already is. This week.
You guys out in podcast land over on YouTube. We've done a great show for you guys today. We got to go looking for Chris. Hopefully he didn't get tapped into over there by the homeless people. I don't know. We've been talking so bad today about them. But we love everyone, and we want everyone to be successful. So we don't have any gripes. But we're going to end this right now.
Yep. Episode 13 on the Episode 13 on the 13th.
Episode 13 on the 13th, you guys. Thank you guys for listening. Come back, subscribe, hit the download button. Of course, come back next time. We appreciate you guys listening. Yep. We'll see you next time on American Lunchbox Podcast. Peace.